wherever you're joining me from all over the world. And this is so exciting to be offering this live stream here on Enlightened World Network. We have had people join in from the UK, from Asia, from Romania, as well as North America. And it's Saturday morning here in North America. I'm in Phoenix, Arizona, and it's beautiful here. The birds are singing, and there's just so much that we have every day to give thanks for. So that's just one thing that I'm looking out at a park. I see a lot of doves. There's plenty of sun, natural light. And yeah, it's just beautiful. So thank you so much for joining me here today. We've been looking at the workbook for students, and if you're just joining this live stream, and I know that some of you have just joined in the last couple of days, what we're doing is we're going through some of the basics of A Course in Miracles, the spiritual text that is relatively new as far as spiritual texts, as far as spiritual traditions go. It was dictated to a couple of PhDs from Columbia University in New York and came out in the 1970s. So it's quite new, especially when one compares it with traditional spirituality, which is ancient, and Christianity, Buddhism, Hinduism, other world religions, spiritual movements, even Islam is much older, much older than A Course in Miracles. However, you'll find as you go through it that this is timeless. It's ancient and it's timeless. And in fact, it's out of time completely. Because as we go through and practice these lessons, we come to a sense, a realization in our lives that time is just a construct. Same with space. It's just an idea, along with all of the other ideas that we've had. And one thing that jumps right out, I'm on Workbook Lesson 19, and that's the lesson that we're covering today here on the live. Something that jumps right out is our own power. And I hope that if you've been following along with me for the last few weeks, that's clearly evident to you. I want it to be. If you take nothing else away from this whole exercise, take away from it a sense of your creative power. Period. End of discussion. We have seen in the last few days that our minds, our thought process literally is capable of creating worlds. How do we experientially know that? We've created this one with all of its variants, with its yo-yo of highs and lows, of elation and suffering, of joy and depression alternating side by side. 1 minute you're feeling great, the next minute you feel terrible, you feel guilty. And all of these yo-yos of emotions, of experience that we characterize as good, bad, ugly. We've separated everything, including ourselves, into categories as human beings, which is just a term, by the way. It's not who we really are. As spirit, that's not who we really are. We're not these bodies. We've separated ourselves into divisions such as nationalities. I mean, what's a border anyway? If you think about it, the concept is ridiculous. It's completely ridiculous. It's a concept that someone made up in the past. They got together and said, okay, well, let's draw some lines on this thing that we call a map, which is supposed to represent things that we call land masses, continents. And we'll just, here we have this state, here we have that state, here we have this country, and we'll just separate everybody off. Yeah. It's completely meaningless. We're seeing that in A Course. And if you've been following along and this resonates with you, I'm very happy that it resonates with you. I'm also very happy if it does not resonate with you. That's perfectly okay. One thing that I wrote a book a couple of years ago, and I have the title is simply Decide, because it's about the ability, our free will, our capacity to make decisions in the present moment that, as we see here in the workbook for students, and of course go on to influence our entire lives. I mean, they literally, the decisions we're making right now, literally impact the future. They're creating it. The future's not here. We make these decisions right now in the present moment. That also means the past is gone, and we see that we dwell in either the future or the past. That's the ego, that's the sense of separation that we all carry around and that we're undoing here in spiritual practice. So if you're new to A Course in Miracles, welcome. Please feel free to type in any comments or questions here on the live stream. Every day I will look at the comment thread and I'll do my best to get to questions and comments here on the live. If I do not, and you're catching the replay, feel welcome to type in comments here anyway. I go back through them several times a day, and odds are I'm going to catch what you have to say, and I'll respond. And if for whatever reason I miss you, this is daily, and I'll be back here tomorrow and the day after that and the day after that. As the title states, it's 365. So this is a daily live stream. And if we think about it, spiritual practice is more than even daily. Not only is it daily, it's moment to moment. In other words, it's all the time, it's life itself. I didn't used to think that, by the way. If you're looking at me talking here live online to a global audience and thinking, oh, well, yeah, it might be easy for you to say. Well, actually, it wasn't always easy for me to say. I also thought that spirituality was reserved for Sunday morning at 11 o'clock. I grew up in the United States in various Christian traditions where people went to a building called church at about 11 o'clock, usually it was, on a Sunday morning. Sometimes people would go on a Wednesday night. Sometimes we'd miss the 11 o'clock on Sunday, and as kids, we'd get dragged to what they call an evening service. I mean, you may know some of this if you grew up in a tradition like this, but I actually grew up with the thought that spirituality was reserved for 11 o'clock on a Sunday. And yet in my being, I knew that was not the case. It's a whole nother subject. But I'm talking about it today because everybody's coming from a different background. Right? Your background is different than someone else's, and what you're going to get out of A Course in Miracles is going to necessarily look different than someone else. Why we each have our own roles to play here in the world as teachers of God. Yes, I said that, as teachers of God. Whether you think you're a teacher or not, you are. Why? We're always giving off an energetic frequency, are we not? We're always teaching. People around us are impacted by the thoughts that we have. All you have to do is take a look at how you're feeling right now. If you're feeling happy and joyful, you are spreading that happiness and joy to everyone around you, the whole world, automatically. And if you are thinking thoughts of separation, like you want somebody to go directly to hell, straight, do not pass go, do not collect $200, like in Monopoly, just directly, then you're emanating that energy. You're extending it, spreading it. Happens, right? And we all do it. And this ties right in perfectly with today's lesson, lesson 19, which reads, I'm not alone in experiencing the effects of my thoughts. I just gave you an example of that. And you can think of many, many more examples in daily life. We are not, absolutely not alone in experiencing the effects of our thoughts. If we're thinking loving thoughts, we extend love. If we're thinking thoughts of separation and hatefulness and divisiveness and bitterness, we see a lot of that these days. Guess what? We've always seen a lot of that in the world. So there's really nothing special about 2020, 2021, whatever, right? This is the way the world is. It's the way the world is. And we made up the Gregorian calendar anyway. What does that mean? 2021 years from a point in time that these dudes determined thousands of years ago was going to be the starting point of this thing that we call a calendar. See where I'm going with all of this? Yeah, we made this. We made this. We're not alone. None of us is alone in seeing the effects of our thoughts. So, central ideas for today, right? Thinking and its results are simultaneous. We look at it differently in the world, don't we? We think we're placed here. We're taught that we're placed here, so it's not our fault. It's another big important point that I've stressed and I'll continue to stress. And well, I'll do it as many times as I'm called to do it, quite frankly, because as adult learners, and I myself am absolutely no different, I need to hear things several different times and in several different manners, several different ways before it really, really sinks in. Yeah, we're all stubborn, myself included. Yeah, so we need repetition. We think that we're placed here in the world and we respond to that. We think that's our job, our duty, our lot, our fate, so to speak, is to respond to a world that we inevitably end up seeing as harsh and cruel. And even though we may see it sometimes as beautiful and joyful, we may look out our window at the park and the doves flying and the early morning light and think, wow, this is beautiful, thank you. And we could go off and 15 minutes later, we could look at something on our social media feed that brings us right back to a place of divisiveness, bitterness, blame, anger, rage, hatred, fear, name it, name it, name it. It's all a manifestation of fear, all of it. Yeah. So what we're not taught growing up is that thinking and its results are simultaneous. We're creating this world. So the question becomes, what world do you want to create? Because we're not just dropped here, victim of fate, saying, here, deal with this. Oh, and have fun doing it. It's not like that. It's not like that. Spirituality is about a lot of things. One of them, chief among them, is about taking responsibility. It's about taking responsibility and owning the fact that, okay, we put ourselves here. I put myself here. I have the power to unmake this. You have the power to unmake this. If that does not resonate with you right now, keep tuning in, because one day it will resonate with you. And I'll tell you what, when it does, that's an eye-opener. Talk about a game changer, so to speak. That's a game changer. When you realize and get that you have the power to unmake suffering, shine it away. You have that power. Each of us has the power to do that. We're so much more powerful, loving, creative than we give ourselves credit for. So much more. So let that idea kick around, and as you practice the exercises in lesson 19, feel that viscerally. And if you don't believe it at first, that's okay. You can actually work on telling yourself that you're powerful. If you don't believe it, that's all right. Just keep doing these exercises and keep coming back and following along. It'll become experience for you. And once it becomes experience, you'll know it to be true. I had a great teacher once in the late 1990s, 2000s. a Tibetan trained Lama named Michael Conklin from a meditation center in Portland, Oregon, who said nothing exists until you experience it. I love that, right? Yeah. So it's okay to doubt. Really, it is. It's fine. It's natural. It's okay to be skeptical. I would just submit, if you are, question everything, not just me, right? Not just somebody talking on TV or the internet or whatever. Question the foundations of every single thing that you now believe. Do that and see what happens. And the workbook, happily, for a lot of us, takes things a little bit at a time. It is not meant to shock you, although some of the ideas might be shocking. There's one in the second paragraph of today's commentary that I want to call to our attention. And the idea that minds are joined, which we looked at yesterday, we look at today, again, number one, thoughts and their effects are simultaneous. Minds are joined. We're all joined. Like it or not, you're joined with somebody who has different political views than you. I'm too. Reality. That's the way it is. We're joined. That's the way it is. That means that there are no private thoughts. So we'll see this idea again, but the workbook presents it here in lesson 19. There are no private thoughts. And think about it, it's true. If we're all one and joined and completely interconnected, how can there be private thoughts? If there's one mind, how can part of that mind split itself off and have its little private conversations? Well, the answer is it's not possible. So this one may induce active resistance because people tend to think of themselves sometimes, maybe you don't, but someone else, your neighbor, your family member, maybe your spouse might think, okay, I'm a private person. Well, what does that mean? I'm a private person. Well, this does not mean that you have to go around telling everybody all of your business. People don't need to know how many times a day you went to the bathroom, right? They don't need to know lots of details, but overall, there are no private thoughts. Why? There is no separation of any kind, period. Nothing unreal exists. That's directly from the very start of the text of A Course in Miracles. Right? It's part of the summary. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Separation is not real. It does not exist. So let's let that idea resonate. Play with it. Let it roll around in your mind. And hopefully it doesn't cause too much friction, though some resistance is inevitable. What do you do if you experience that? Just come back to the exercises, and it asks you to do just the practice period. That's all. Just the practice period as it is set up. So let me bring some comments up here today. Thank you so much for joining in. Yes, Robert, hello. And Dietrich, thank you so much for tuning in here today, guys. Yeah. So Deidre writes, I'll read some of these here on the stream while we're still at it. Yeah, there were exercises that you're uncomfortable with. That's how we grow. We leave our comfort zone. Totally. Agreed. Yeah. Nobody ever said, right, that growth of any kind is easy, right? Whoever changed comfortably? I certainly didn't. I mean, sometimes I had some kicking and screaming resistance to this, why our ego is entrenched and it wants to keep certain aspects of our own suffering, which is ridiculous when we think about it. But I mean, that's the world we experience. So yeah, I've completely experienced that. And, we leave our comfort zone. That's where growth occurs. And that happens in any aspect of life. And because spirituality actually is life itself, it happens in our spiritual path. Most definitely. Yeah. Excellent point. All right. So yeah, Robert, we're all masters. I love this. Yes, I'm glad you joined me today, Robert. Thank you. Yeah, and Robert writes, what is a master? A teacher that always learns and improves themselves. Yeah, we are all masters because are all the children of God, God's son. I mean, the course uses the word son, son, daughter, whatever, right? Whatever you're comfortable with. We're the extension of God. As spirit, we are the extension of God. Therefore, the course uses the term the Son of God. I'll just use that term and just know that I'm referring to all of us here. Yeah, therefore we are all masters and we're always teaching and always learning. Yeah, the course says something that's really, really cool that I really resonate with, and that's we teach something in order that we may learn it completely. And that makes a lot of sense. We gain, in other words, we gain by giving. We receive love when we extend love. And that's the way it is. And of course, the converse is also true. If we're extending division and hatred, then we're going to get that back because people are going to resist us, right? They're going to oppose us. They're going to oppose our will. And then we can go off and rage or feel sorry for ourselves or whatever. And ultimately, that's not productive. When we can extend love instead and get love back. Yeah, we're always learning for sure, right? We're always learning. And, it looks like we're improving ourselves in the world, in the relative. It looks like we're improving. Why? Because we're unlearning, right? Aren't we? At the same time, we're becoming more loving. We're becoming more forgiving. Yeah, we're looking happier. We're giving off a different vibe. Yeah, in truth, who we really are ultimately does not need improvement because we're not broken. That's the ultimate truth. Here in the relative, this is an improvement because I mean it's easy to see in the world's terms that if you're happier than the day before, that's definitely, we would consider that an improvement. If you're more forgiving, more loving, etc. Yes. Oh yeah, fake it till you make it. I like this. Yeah, I've always loved this phrase because it's not exactly even faking it, right? If you have the intention to show up, then and you do your best, that's all that really matters. I mean, that's one of the four agreements. If you're familiar with that book, Don Miguel Ruiz, the four agreements, one of them is that you make with yourself, right, is to do your best, right? Because your best on one day is going to be different than your best on another day. You might feel sick today, and then tomorrow you might feel 1,000 times better and you show up and it looks better. But if you do your best every day, that's really kind of a way of faking it until you make it. You just show up and extend love to the best of your ability, knowing that it's going to be different one day than it is the next, because we're all having this experience of fluctuation, of wild fluctuation. So the key in there for us is to not judge ourselves. I mean, we're our own worst critic. I'm my own worst critic, clearly. We all have that voice in our head that tries to tell us that, who are you to be doing this, right? You're no good, da da da. Yeah, we all have that voice. And this is a practice of not listening to that. Acknowledge it, let it go. It's like a thought, like a passing thought in a meditation practice. Yeah, and there's definitely a lot to unlearn. Absolutely. And more to remember. I love this. I'm going to end with this comment, Robert. Thank you so much. There's a lot more to remember. And what are we remembering? We're remembering the truth, the living, experiential truth of who we are. And that's love itself. That's the Son of God, right? An extension of God is one with God. We're reawakening or remembering that truth. So everything that looks like a growth moment or an improvement in the language that we use in the world is an unlearning that has taken place of all of the baggage of the ego. And it is a remembering. Yeah. So we're in a sense, in essence, reawakening to the truth of who we really are. All right, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you guys for your comments here. And if you catch the replay, write your comments in here. I'm happy to answer them. And thank you all for joining me here today. As always, this has been A Course in Miracles 365. I'm Tomás Garza. Thank you so much.